Okay, let's keep it simple today. I've already got a drum beat pulled up. It is in 80 BPM and it's 4 bars. Got my jazz bass. Let's record a bass line. Okay, Les Paul is out. Let's lay down some guitars. Okay, signal chain check before I go any further. So I'm going directly into the classic 108 fuzz, and then the new X Golden Horse into the Two Notes Revolt. And on the bass, I use the crunch channel of this. Sounds really nice. It's a Marshall Plexi. And then on the guitars, I think on 2 of those guitars, I used the clean channel of this, which is based on a Fender Bassman, and the crunch channel on 1. I'm going out of that. I'm not using the delay or reverb today. I'm going out of those into the MPC One Plus, and then I'm going out of the MPC One Plus's main outs into the Tascam Model 12, and I'm also recording my voice through the Tascam Model 12. So that's today's signal chain. Okay, we're gonna listen into what I did, and then I'm going to break down on every instrument what I had to add to make it sound the way it does. Let's go. Okay, so let's go one by one. The first that we have is the bass. And for the bass, I put on a kill EQ. So you can see I basically just killed the highs because there's no need for them. I made the high cutoff 1.48 kilohertz, so 1,480 hertz. And then I boosted the mids a bit, and I boosted the lows quite a bit on that. That gave it a pretty good sound. Next is a tube drive. On the tube drive, I've got the drive up to 17%, saturation all the way up to 80, because I really wanted to give it a nice saturated bass sound. So emulate some tubes, and then I boosted the output 0.6 dB. And then last, I have a chorus on the bass. That's what gives it that underwater sound. It's only 18% in the mix, and then I dropped the depth down from about 7 to 4, and that's how you get the bass sound that you just heard. Next up, we have the first guitar. And so So that's that plucky guitar right there. And I added a kill EQ to that, killed the lows, boosted the mids 1.5 dB. I'm not exactly sure which mid frequency this EQ uses because it doesn't specify, but that's what sounded good. And then I set the highs to 4.97 kilohertz, and I pulled out 2.4 decibel of the highs. Next up, I've got a tube drive on that as well. 20% drive, 70% saturation, and I boosted it 4.1 dB because it was a quite low signal already. I put on a phaser, and when I put the initial patch on, it sounded fine, so I didn't touch it. And then I added an auto pan, and that one is in eighth notes, and it's 50% wet and dry. Next up, I have the second guitar, which is this. Just some little arpeggio things. I got a kill EQ on that. Basically took out the lows, killed them. I went up to I tried to go up to 3K in the highs, and I took out 4 decibels of that. And then I also pulled out 5.4 dB of the mids. So it's got a really squishy kind of sound. Next up, I got an air flavor, and it's this into the pale timbre, added some distortion, added some flutter, and then I monofied it at 50%. Got a flanger on that. The initial patch sounded good, so I didn't touch it. And auto pan, and this one is in quarter notes, also 50% as far as the wet. Last up is the third guitar, which is these kind of double stop thingies. Yeah, those are cool. Some octave double stops. And I got the kill EQ on again. Cut out all the lows because I don't need them. The low frequency was at 200 hertz, so everything below 200 is completely out. I left the mids where they were. I set the highs to 2000, and I left those where they were also. So that was a simple one. I just basically cut out all the lows. Then I got a vintage compressor. I didn't want to do like parallel compression, so I left the wet dry up to 100, left the input where it was at 0. It's got a very fast attack set at 20, and a slow release to give it some sustain. I messed with the threshold. I believe it's at about -18. The ratio is at 10-1, I believe. And I put the knee up to 40, so it's a little bit harder of a compressor. And then I had to boost the output up to 10 on that. Next up is an air chorus. And for this one, this is just the initial patch. It sounded fine. And this one has an auto pan that I believe is in half notes. Yep, half notes. And it's at 50% as far as the wet dry is concerned. So when I unmute all of these, we get this. And yeah, I like the way that one sounded. So there you go. Today's was a pretty fun one. I'm actually happier with this than I was with the last one. Had to bang it out quick because I've got to leave in like 15 minutes to go teach some kids how to ride skateboards. Overall, not bad. Happy with what I was able to come up with today, which is good. That means I'm moving in the proper direction, feeling creative again. I can't wait to dump this one into the Tascam Porta 02 because I think that the sounds that I achieved here will sound really good going through the cassette tape. Add some nice saturation, chop off some of the high end on it, and give it that nice warm feeling. And I also can't wait to chop this one up because this is just a loop at the moment. But what I do when I make these loops, a technique that I discovered so that you can arrange a loop and create a song. You try to think of every possible melody that can work in the context of the loop that you're creating out front, and you record those so that when you go in later, like when I played back the song right now, all the drums are going, but you know, I might start off with just those octave double stops and the bongos. I used Wave Bakery samples for the drums also. I used 3 of the bongo samples from their Wave Bakery bongo samples and 3 of their, and then I used kick, snare, a bell, and a closed hat from their acoustic drum samples. So basically I might start off with just the bongos and just those double stops, let that go for 4 measures, or maybe only 2 measures, and then create some type of verse that has one of the guitars and the bass, but maybe only the bass would come in at first. And then halfway through, one of the guitars comes in. And then I create a chorus. Maybe that verse would only have the drums. And then when I come to a chorus, I'll allow all the drums to play and all the bongos. And I'll have 1, maybe 2 guitars. Or maybe I'll save one of the guitars to create a bridge later. You know, I do all of that in Logic Pro 10 because it's a lot easier to do there than it is on the MPC One Plus. I do some arranging on the MPC One Plus, but the touch interface is kind of touchy, for lack of a better word. It's not always as responsive as like your iPad would be or your phone would be. So it can be a bit annoying. The only time I do that is when I'm really excited to dump out to the Porta O2. Like a few of those songs lately, I was so excited because I knew they were going to sound amazing through it. So I just forced myself to do some arranging in the MPC One Plus. I use the song mode for that. That's the best way to do it, so you don't have to chop too much stuff. If you guys would like to see that kind of process, I can make a video of that. Basically, it's just like figuring out what you want where, chopping, and a lot of duplicating. If you use the duplicated function well, it's not as hard as it is without it. But that's all I got. Hyped on what I was able to make. Hope you guys liked it too. Thank you for watching. Almost 1,000 subscribers. I think we're at 970. So if you're not subscribed, please like and subscribe because I'm trying to crack that 1,000. But peace.